Hello, guys. Welcome back to my podcast conversation with Zalia. I'm your host, Zalia Lorraine, and today is Friday, August 2nd, 2024. And in today's episode, I'm going to review the 2003 movie, Bring It Down the House, starring SteveMartin and Queen Latifah. Now, as a kid, I watched this movie a lot on DVD, and now that I'm older, I have some things to discuss. The movie doesn't hit the way it hit when I was younger, so let's get into it. In concerning fact, I'm discussing a movie and the characters and pretty much a lot of important plot points. I'm prefacing this up. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't watched the movie, don't listen to this episode. If you already watched this movie or don't have no intention to watch the movie, then listen to this episode. But anyways, let's jump right in. So the movie begins with Steve Martin's character Peter Simpson, an overworked lawyer, chatting with lawyer girl via email, and pretty much the whole intro of the movie is them chatting through email. And then we cut to Peter at work with Howie, with his best friend / co-worker, Howie, played by Eugene Levy, aka the dad from American Pie. And Peter shows Howie a picture of Lawyer Girl, which we're led to believe is this white news reporter. So there's a lot of foreshadowing with that photo. And how he comments on her lawyer girl's appearance, stating that she looks anemic. Then Peter, through his secretary, gets a phone call from his ex-wife, Kate, played by Jean Smart. I'm looking at my show notes. And pretty much, he was supposed to take his kids, Kimberly and Sarah. I refer to her by the actress name. Sarah and Georgie, played by Kimberly, I forgot her last name, and Ernestine Jones from 2.5 Men. He was supposed to take his kids to Hawaii, but due to him being at work all the time, due to him being a prop guy at work, he can't take them to Hawaii, and the kids are upset. So he decides. So in the next scene, he has a meeting with Mrs. Arness, played by Joan Plowright. He wants to book as a client, and Mrs. Arness is pretty much a wealthy early socialite who needs a lawyer to manage her finances, and someone's pretty much Ponzi scammed her. And even though she made her money, her father was a wealthy tobacco owner or something to that effect, but her father was well off, so during the dinner, the waiter tried to pretty much have her dog, William, outside, which Peter checked the waiter for not having a no dogs allowed sign. And afterwards, he rushes home to prepare for his date, doing his hair, getting all the food out and all that. Then he plays some instrumental. He winds up opening the door and is first shocked that his date is a black woman, Charlene, played by Queen Latifah. And Charlene is pretty much, the best way to describe her character, Charlene is pretty much a manic pixie dream girl character. A black, hip, manic pixie dream girl character. Now, for those living in rock who don't know what a manic pixie dream girl is, it's a female character archetype of pretty much a quirky or eccentric female character that pretty much pops up in the movie just to the only character traits with them pretty much cheering up the main character's life. But Peter's upset that Charlene, quote unquote, catfished him when she really didn't, because Charlene was in that picture, because in that picture that was shown earlier, because Peter thought that that lawyer girl was the white female news reporter, when actually Charlene, aka lawyer girl, was the woman taken into the police car. And when Charlene shows the proof and it pretty much zooms in on a picture of her, it says, "Sorry you got a twist dog, but I don't take a lot of photo ops for where I've been." And Charlene explains that she's been in jail, and that she's in jail for a crime she didn't do, which was armed robbery. And have an argument about it. And Peter kicks Charlene out of the house. And I forgot to mention earlier in the movie, Peter has a conversation with his lawyer, with his neighbor, Mrs. Klein, played by the late BettyWhite. May she rest in peace. Who's your typical elderly nosy neighbor? And she's also a bigot as well. Like, one of the first racist comments she states is her being suspicious about Latino family moving into the neighborhood, which she mistakes as landscapers. But back to the story, Peter kicks Charlene out of the house, and just as Peter takes off his shoes, Charlene causes a scene claiming to be a druggie that Peter knocked up and has a child with, who owes child support to, which catches the attention of Mrs. Klein, who asks Peter, "Peter, is everything okay? I thought I heard Negro." To which Peter responds, no Negro spoken here." Then Mrs. Klein goes back to her home. But pretty much, Peter plans to call the police on him until Charlene pretty much blackmails Peter into staying with him by threatening to pretty much leak the emails that they exchange between each other, and pretty much allows Charlene to stay. Then when he tries to wake up Charlene, he gets knocked out by her. And then when Charlene gets outside, he pretty much kicks her out of the house and pretty much tells her that not only that he threw away the emails that she had and destroyed them. Which I know this is 2003, but the emails, they had to be saved in somewhere for them. But never mind. So Peter drives to pick up his kids, who's going to spend the whole summer with them, while Kate is going to spend the whole summer with her younger beau, who used to be Peter's caddy when he was younger, which I don't know if that's considered grooming up, but never mind. And we're also introduced to Ashley, Kate's younger sister, who's pretty much a golden Karen who chases after near-dead elderly men and dates them for the money. Pretty much a geriatric gold digger. And they pretty much have some little argument. And the whole thing with Kate and Peter was that their marriage fell apart due to pretty much Peter being devoted to his work, which causes Kate to leave when Peter gets a cold. And Peter and the kids, they're driving back to the house when they know there's some crazy block party going on, which was thrown by Charlene, who somehow snuck back into the house. And as Charlene puts it, she called a friend of hers to do her hair, and they wanted to invite their other friends, and they led to a house party. To the point where house party where he had to donate, where Peter literally couldn't get back to his own home. He had to pretty much trying to call the police on the bouncer to pretty much get into his own home. And things go from bad to worse when not only is Sarah, who's your typical teenage girl, the one that chases after boys and all that, is caught drinking beer, which Peter takes away, but Georgie is caught playing dice. And when Peter tries to kick them out, he wound up referring to the house party guests as dogs, which doesn't go well, to the point he gets thrown into his pool. Everyone from the house party, they wind up leaving and Charlene has to talk with the bouncer dude. He brings up Widow, who will become important later on. And Charlene pretty much goes back to the house, and Peter winds up kicking her out. Then the next day, Peter and the kids, they go to this country club where Peter leaves Sarah with Georgie, and while he beats up with Howie to wait for Mrs. Arness. But Charlene makes a bold entrance, which winds up all set to Jungle Love by Boris Day in the Time, which attracts the attention of Howie, who fiends for her instantly. Like, instantly. But, and also there is Ashley, the geriatric Golden Karen, who mistakes Charlene for a maid. And Charlene checks her, which is the beginning of their rivalry. In order to disguise Charlene, he pretty much passes Charlene off as the nanny of his kids, which isn't akin to, I hate to say, a mammy. I'm sorry, but we have to acknowledge it. But then again, this is a 2000s movie. We all know that a lot of 2000s movies have some things that did not age well in the slightest. But the next, which pretty much Charlene goes along with it, then they wind up returning home and pretty much doing research about her case with Peter. It was already, but Charlene bring it up. Pretty much Peter living next to the sister of his neighbor. I forgot to mention earlier that Mrs. Klein is also the sister of one of Peter's bosses at work, and she talks of, and Peter brings up his daughter Sarah now, and she's going places, in which we're showing Sarah sneaking off with Charlene quotes she's going places. Next day, Charlene of robbery pops up at Peter's office, in which they have a discussion of his case. Namely, she found out that there was a witness who stated that the person that robbed the bank didn't have that tune, but they threw her story out, in which Charlene brings up brings up a legal case involving that, which Peter commends her for her intellect and smartness, and how for Charlene be familiar with a lot of legal cases. And they have a conversation about Charlene's personality, which comes across as somewhat awful, and how Charlene doesn't act proper, aka white. In which Howie pretty much co-signs Charlene. Then Peter's bosses at work and his coworkers, they're coming, in which she pretty much, Charlene, who avoids doing the slave thing again, passes herself off as a church lady that was asking Peter, pretty much visiting Peter to fund her church. And Peter has a small conversation with his coworkers. Then, in the next scene, they're probably at some golf court. There's some golf course, which Mrs. Arness is playing golf, and Howie's on a date with Charlene, in which he states, "I like to dip you in cheese whiz and spread you on a Ritz cracker." in which Charlene replies that Howie is some kind of freaky, and Howie states, "You got me straight tripping, boo." That's how much I remember this movie, to the way I remember some of the quotes from the movie. And Peter catches Charlene and brings up Charlene's criminal record, just as Sarah and her new old benefactor shows up in. And Ashley says, "What is she doing here?" and calls her Aunt Jemima, which leads to Charlene almost getting to it with Ashley, who a scene earlier was shown at a restaurant. A few scenes earlier was shown at a restaurant chatting with Kate, who's on an outing with her beau, about Charlene and describing her very, very bigoted terms. Then when Ashley's alone, Charlene pretty much confronts her for her comments, and when Ashley goes on, this leads to a catfight, which Charlene curb stomps, not in the literal sense. Curb stomps Ashley, leaves her hanging on the locker. It says, "Don't you ever have this conversation with me again." It pretty much leaves. Then we're shown at night, later on, we're shown Charlene teaching George how to read through using a adult magazine. Because Georgie has some reading problems or having some difficulties in school, which gets caught by Peter. And pretty much Peter has to hide. And since Mrs. Arness is coming to pick up Georgie so they can play cards, he pretty much has Charlene go somewhere else. Then a boy comes to pick up Sarah to go on a date and we're led to believe that the dude that picked her up is a boyfriend with her actual boyfriend, whose name is Aaron. If you get the message. If you get the message. Aaron, her actual day is in the car and they're going to some party somewhere in which she makes out with him. So with Peter and Charlene left alone, they decided to go out, which they're out to some hip restaurant. And Peter discusses the failure of his relationship with Kate, and how pretty much the relationship ended with Kate, pretty much Peter being devoted to his work, in which, in so many words, Charlene pretty much shows Peter had a good time dancing with him, which catches the attention of Kate, who's also out with Ashley, who has a scar from who has a black eye from her fight with Charlene. And when Kate inquires about the injury, I forgot what Ashley stated. And when Kate notices Peter dancing with Charlene, Kate tries to pretty much go down to the dance floor, but Ashley stops her, which causes Kate to cry over Peter. And pretty much Charlene and Peter are having a good time dancing to Ain't Nobody being sung by Kelly Price. Then when they get back home, Charlene tries to give Peter a master class in sexuality, or how pretty much help Peter get his groove back, which their fun time gets caught by Mrs. Klein, who was on his way taking Georgie home, which she exclaims, "Mendingo!" Like I said, Mrs. Klein is super racist. A concerning fact, her brother is one of Peter's bosses. This gets back to Mr. Klein, who pretty much confronts Peter about this, in which Peter denies it. Then later on, Charlene is having a conversation with her ex-boyfriend Widow, played by the dark-skinned dude from Diary of a Mad Black Woman. The dark-skinned bald-headed dude by Diary of a Mad Black Woman, if you get the reference. And pretty much the discussion about Peter helping Charlene clear her name, because I should know that Widow is a very, very important character. And Peter notices this and pretty much confronts Charlene about it, which is interrupted by a phone call from Ashley. And the phone call, and the situation with not Ashley, Sarah, I keep getting these two names mixed up, was that Aaron, I don't know why I keep saying that. Aaron wanted to go to the next level with Sarah and pretty much try to make a pass at her, try to force stuff on her. But if you watch the delete scene, what actually happened was Sarah caught Aaron cheating on her with another girl. I don't know, was that in our tour of the scene, or was that part of the scene where Sarah's but what show knows that let me rephrase that. In the lead scene, when Charlene goes to Sarah to confront the boyfriend, Aaron, she catches Aaron with another girl and pretty much gives Aaron a lesson by hanging him over from the rooftop with him holding his feet, threatening, pretty much forcing him to apologize to Sarah. And pretty much they wind up returning back home, and Peter has a conversation with Sarah about what happened, and pretty much Peter tries to smother himself with a pillow. Then Mr. Ness decides to have a dinner at Peter's house to pretty much officially make him her lawyer, which has Charlene pretty much return to her nanny role. Pretty much she's in her nanny role full force. And Peter pretty much arranges the dinner. And while preparing the dinner, Miss Arnett, she makes some tone-deaf comments, like bringing up how during her childhood, she had a live in Miami, and also singing a Negro spiritual. Mama, is the master gonna sell us tomorrow? which is one of the more latest parts of the movie, which causes Charlene to poison her food with Pepto-Bismol. But Mrs. Arnett, she doesn't receive the Pepto-Bismol tainted food. It's Peter that winds up receiving it, which causes Peter to use the bathroom, which is during Mrs. Arnett's sing-along. Then during the dinner, Sarah and Georgie, they decide to watch some educational TV, but they wind up receiving a news report about Charlene, where it's revealed that Charlene didn't escape, that Charlene wasn't released from prison, she's actually escaped, a fugitive. Which you get Peter in trouble for hard refusal. And during the news report, they show footage of the robbery, which, if you look if you look at the footage, it's obvious. It's obvious it's someone disguising as Charlene wearing a bad wig, and so pretty much Peter turns against them, and Miss Arnett calls off the deal with Peter, which causes Peter to pretty much kick her out. Then the next day at work, Peter and Howie, they're having a conversation, and Howie shows concern for Charlene. And during the conversation, Lex Luthor from Smallville, I forgot his name, pretty much passed passes by them saying that he's pretty much going to be Mrs. Arness's lawyer. And they overhear pretty much the FBI talking to Peter's bosses at work, which leaves them sleeping. And before Peter leaves, Howie asks Peter to tell Charlene if he sees her that the clue points out the window and you got me all twisted up in the game, which I don't know. Which I don't know what the heck that means, considering that it has to be pretty much slang, because the movie uses some occasionally outdated or made up slang. But just as Peter gets in the car, he gets confronted by Widow, who pretty much tries to convince him not to discuss the case, which causes Peter realize that it was Widow who pretty much committed the robbery and framed Charlene, and that Charlene was innocent. And when he goes to pick up, and then he goes to the house and asks the kids Charlene's whereabouts, which Jordan tells them the story, which Georgie states that he knew that Charlene was innocent. He realized that the kids gave Charlene his titanium cell phone, which will become important, which is also important. And he goes to pick up Charlene and pretty much tells Charlene that Widow committed a robbery and framed her for it, which shocks and upsets Charlene. And pretty much, when Peter asks Charlene what is Charlene's main Widow's hangout, it's a nightclub called the Down Low, which, yeah, the club is literally called the Down Low, which Peter plans to go to that club just to get evidence of Widow's involvement, which Charlene warns him that a white person at the Down Low is either a dead person, a cop, a corpse, or a crackhead. You can't even, and it tells Peter that you can't even talk hood. Then as he drops off Charlene contacts Howie pretty much, and she and Howie, they go to Mrs. Arness's house where she's with Lex Luthor. And when Lex Luthor makes a comment, and when Charlene tries to pretty much convince her that she's innocent and that Peter doesn't deserve to get kicked to the curb by Mrs. Arness, Lex Luthor makes a comment about Charlene and Peter's relationship, which leads to Charlene giving him the big hurt, aka knocking the ever-living crap out of him, which Mrs. Arness threatens to call the police. But pretty much kidnap, pretty much so many words, cool, kidnap convince Mrs. Arness to come with them, but Howie holding her dog, William, hostage. Meanwhile, Kate goes to the house upon realizing what's going on and pretty much to be with the kids, and pretty much they give her the full story. And Peter pretty much goes to the Down Low where she pays some local urbanites to pretty much dress him like a wigger, where he talks an outdated 2000 slang and pretty much manages to make it in the nightclub and gets into a big dance scene, which catches the attention of Widow. Pretty much he's escorted to Widow's office, where Widow states, "Damn, boy, you looking all kinds of stupid." "Really? 'Cause I got this outfit from your mama." In which Widow replies to cut the wig of shit. Meanwhile, Charlene, Howie, and Ms. Ernest, they're on their way to the Down Low to pretty much save Peter's behind. And Peter, during the entirety of his scene with Widow, he pretty much records Widow via turning the boombox thing to record instead of stopping the song as playing, pretty much recording Widow admitting to committing the robbery that Charlene was wrongfully jailed for, disguising himself as pretty much wearing a wig. While Mrs. Arness Charlene and Howie, they wind up robbing the club where Mrs. Arnett, she winds up forced to sit at the bar with two black dudes, and she pretty much develops a bond with them where her pretty much smoking a joint and all. Then Widow pretty much comes out with Peter, which Charlene pretty much tried to convince, has a talk with Widow, and then Widow pushes Peter, which leads to an all-out brawl, and an all-out brawl while Mrs. Arnett, who's pretty much stoned out, says the P word. Namely says pussies. Then during the fight, Widow shoots Charlene, who's not injured due to the titanium cell phone, pretty much. The bullet striking the titanium cell phone in her shirt instead of her, which I said that the titanium cell phone was born pretty much. And for those asking, how pretty much the movie ends with Widow getting arrested for for the armed robbery and Charlene's name being cleared, and Mrs. Arnett becoming friends with the two black dudes at the bar and hiring Peter as a lawyer. Pretty much, and a few months later, Peter and Howie, they quit Tobias Klein and Barnes to pretty much launch their own office. When his bosses said, "Peter, we can talk about this," Peter replies by imitating Charlene, "And you can kiss my natural black accent." I'm sorry, I'm doing the bad impression. And also, Peter bumps into Ashley and pretty much warns Ashley's new man about Sarah. Then Peter wants to be able to Kay, and they want to pretty much reconcile, and it shows Charlene and Howie, who are now a couple, giving Howie a makeover, a black makeover with Howie wearing braids, and pretty much happy ending. Now, my thoughts about the movie. As a kid, like I stated earlier, I watched this movie a lot as a kid, and now that I'm older, I should know that there are some things with the movie that haven't aged well. Namely, Charlene having disguised herself as a nanny to Peter's kids just to pretty much throw off suspicion, which in itself is kind of bad because of the optics. Charlene being a nanny for Peter's children, which gives all very mammy vibes, I hate to say it. And then the fact that the main villains being the racist Karens, and Widow, the bald and dark-skinned dude from their room at Black Woman, framing her for what happened for the armed robbery. It even, and concerning the fact that Widow there's a lot of implications of that. In fact, in some black movies, or a lot of black classic movies, it's always the dark-skinned people that's the villain, which is another thing in itself. But the funniest parts of the movie, my favorite parts of the movie is the scene of Charlene making a scene outside. And with one of the quotes being, "And little Kareem doesn't want your child support. He just wants a relationship with his white daddy," and Peter pretty much tackling her pretty much, and Miss Klein coming out, "I thought I heard Negro," which I know racism isn't funny, but that's one of the funniest things ever. And another funny scene is Peter saying, "I want you and your dogs to go back to the pound now," which causes Peter to get thrown in the pool because, like Peter, I get what Peter was angry that he pretty much, that Charlene threw a house party in his house and that he couldn't even get into his own house, but still. Peter should have been a lot more careful with his words. And Howie was also a funny comic relief character, and for him, spending the entire movie wooing Queen Latifah, Charlene, and all. If you want my take on this movie, Bringing Out the House is your typical 2000s comedy movie that has some offensive things that wouldn't fly, like Peter dressing up as a wigger, but at the same time, it's a classic. And it's one of my favorite movies. But anyways, that's the end of this review. I wonder what your thoughts on Bringing Down the House, your thoughts on Bringing Down the House. If you enjoyed this episode or you wanted to write your thoughts on Bringing Down the House, leave a comment. Leave a comment on this episode, or on the Instagram account Instagram and Facebook account for Conversation with Zalia. If you want to contact me or leave feedback, contact me, email me at cwxpodcast@outlook.com. And now for my next review, for my next episodes, I would do an episode tackling the movie Why Do Fools Fall in Love and the real story. Now, for those who in the real story of Frankie Lyman and his 3 wives, then some MJ themed podcast episodes. One with a an MJ fan that has done research on this topic, and also a retrospective of the Bernie Mac show, where I discussed the Bernie Mac show and pretty much named my top 5 episodes, namely my 2 favorite episodes from all 5 seasons of the Bernie Mac show. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can listen to this episode on Spotify or wherever Spotify, Amazon Music, our radio, or wherever podcast format Conversation is available at. Hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.